Welcome to Karatbarsfree.com. I'm glad that you stopped by to spend some time with us here on the website. Got some exciting things here in this video I'd like to share with you. Things about current events, the global economy, what is happening in the world today, and an opportunity for you to be able to know a little bit more about the future and things that are coming. And what I thought I would do is just share with you some newspaper articles and clippings and things that I've put together related to the economy, the global efforts to sustain a global economy, and really what it lies ahead for you and me and everyone else really who lives here on planet Earth as we embark on a time like no one has ever experienced before. So let's just go ahead and get right into our presentation here. I'm going to move back here for just a moment, and I'm going to get back to the beginning of these slides. So here you can see the very first slide. Somebody gave to me a card and told me a little bit about Karatbars one day. As I listened to them tell me about Karatbars, I heard them telling me all about how it was gold and how it was something that would be beneficial in not only gaining and sustaining wealth, but also it would be an opportunity to be able to be prepared for things that are happening. And so I began doing a little bit of investigating. I don't know about you, but I have certainly been part of ventures before that didn't always pan out. And so I'm careful, I'm cautious. And so I decided I would do my homework on this one so that I wouldn't be caught off guard. So I'd like to share with you some of the things that I found in my homework here. Now, you and I both know that there are people who look for answers to life's questions from the likes of Nostradamus and his writings. Some look to the stars. Some open a Bible. They begin to focus on that, and things seem to become more clear and less blurry. People from all walks of life, mothers, young mothers, older, grandparents, young people want to know really what's happening around us, because we can see that there are a lot of things happening in the world today. I don't really know anybody who doesn't really want to have at least enough to be able to take care of their personal needs, to be able to make ends meet, and to be able to even save a little bit away for a rainy day and plan ahead a little bit. And so everybody seems to have that desire. A good friend of mine by the name of Arnold Donato came up to me and shared with me a concept through Karatbars.com of how I would be able to start with just very little and would at the end of 12 weeks be able to make almost $5,000 a week very passively, without really putting much effort in, but through acquiring gold and also sharing the need with others through the circumstances that we're all facing today. Well, it sounded all good and it sounded like it was a great idea, but like I said, I wanted to study things out. I wanted to investigate. And so I looked at the card that he showed me. It was a gold card, if you will. Had a little piece of gold in the middle that was actually 1 carat. And in fact, let me show you one that I have right here. This is a gold card, 2 carat, or not carat, but 1 gram of gold inside of this card. It's 99.9% currency grade gold, which is different than jewelry grade, which is only 99.5%. So I listened to Arnold as he shared some things with me, and I thought I would just check things out. The importance of 99.9% currency grade gold is appealing to probably just about anybody, because we'd all like to have the best if you're really going to begin putting thought and planning into something for your family, for yourself, to be able to generate wealth, to be able to sustain your personal needs. He shared with me that Karatbars International is a company that's been around for several years now, but has been in the United States since 2011. It's a reputable company, and I have to be honest, I looked all over. I tried to find anything that I could find, and I really couldn't find anything negative about Karatbars International. And so I continued doing my homework, and I want to share with you some things that I found. Now, just on Friday, just this last week, on February the 21st, there was a newspaper article that stated that gold was on the rise, and it was on a continued streak up since November of last year, and that there was no sign of anything declining. This was an article February 10, 2014. It comes from marketwatch.com. So perhaps you've read that. It told us that gold, now being at over $1,300 an ounce, is going to continue inclining. And not only that, but we can expect it to go considerably higher. So I continued my search. I decided I would look up things on the United States government website. One of the very first things that I found was on the Social Security website, the .gov, ss.gov website on Social Security and the administration and the outlook and forecast of what lies ahead. That outlook was not very promising. In fact, in the outlook, it specifically states that the leading edge of the baby boom generation will reach early eligibility age for retirement under Social Security in just 2 years. The United States will then enter a sustained period in which the older population will grow at a rate that far outpaces that of the working population. So it was a little bit startling when we begin to see that our government leaders are expressing concern about the things that are happening around us today too. So I continued my search, and I found the next article simply says this. The next article said that for the very first time in the history of the United States, government dependents now outnumber those with private sector jobs in 11 United States states. That was published on December 26th, the day after Christmas, 2012. That was not the end of it, because it was only a short time later that there was an article published, and Ben Bernanke made the announcement last year in April that for the very first time, those dependents now outnumber those who contribute to the system, and because of that, we are reaching a path that seems unsustainable economically within our own local government here in the United States of America. So this is concerning to me, it's concerning to others, and certainly you would be concerned no matter where you live in the world. The face of those who are now obtaining government benefits has changed. It's not a segment of society that people may have stereotyped in the past. People who are going to school are receiving government benefits and aid. People who are just in between jobs, people who are struggling a little bit, people who maybe perhaps even still live at home. Whatever the case may be, this is an article about one young lady by the name of Maggie living in Texas who decided that she needed government aid in order to continue her college education. Now, the next article that I found was one that actually featured President Obama, and you can see here President Obama as he is there in a group of individuals out in the community, and it says this. This article says that the Census Bureau now concludes that means-tested government benefit recipients outnumber full-time year-round workers. This was published in October of last year. So for the very first time in history, the working class is now outnumbered by those who are receiving benefits from the government. That's a challenge that our government faces, along with the decline of the dollar, along with the increase of inflation, and along with the volatility of the stock market and the global economy. There are challenges that we face today that no one ever really imagined before. Let's look at the next one here. We're not alone. This is an article from South Africa, which simply states that 3.5 million people are now footing the bill for 17.5 million others. In other words, 21 million individuals are being sustained through the contributions into the tax system in South Africa by 3.5 million people. It's startling when you begin to realize that these are not things that are just happening here around us, but these are things that are happening actually around the world. And perhaps you have taken notice of some of these things yourself. Let's keep keep on going to the next one here. This has become such an alarming thing to people who are in leadership, people who make global decisions, and people who are in charge of local states and municipalities, that many have begun moving forward in order to create legislation in order to have gold and silver as currency within the local state. This article here is published. Excuse me. This article here is published in January 5 of 2011. It says at least 10 states have introduced gold coins as currency bills. This is published at talkingpointsmemo.com, and you can see that these are all listed here. Georgia, Montana, Missouri, Colorado, Idaho, Indiana, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Utah, and Washington have all proposed legislation in order to enact their own currency through gold. This is extremely incredible, something that we have never really experienced or expected before. And why is it happening? It's happening simply because our own local and state governments are losing faith in the American dollar because of inflation and the decrease in its value, that they are looking in other directions to be able to create currency that will sustain itself. In other words, a gold currency has its value in the value of its own precious metal. The next article here, published on May 30, 2011, says Utah and other states push gold as legal tender and prepare for the U.S. dollars to collapse. These are our states in these 50 great United States of America that are moving forward with legislation as they prepare for the dollar to collapse. The next article goes on and says simply that they're not stopping there. As confidence in the dollar wanes, over a dozen states push for gold as legal tender. Now let me put this slide just a little bit bigger for you to be able to see. More than a dozen states are pushing for gold as legal tender. Okay, so let's look at the date on this article. This article was published on April 8 of 2013, less than a year ago. 12 states were pushing for gold as legal tender. Now let's see what the reason is. Notice down near the bottom where it says via Bloomberg, and in bold it says distrust of the Federal Reserve and concern that United States dollars may become worthless are fueling a push in more than a dozen states to recognize gold and silver coins as legal tender. This is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Let's back up here with this where it says that lawmakers in Arizona are poised to follow Utah, which authorized bullion for currency in 2011. And similar bills are advancing in Kansas, South Carolina, and other states. And I don't know what else to tell you except for you need to fasten your seatbelts. You need to get prepared for what is really happening, because things are taking place quickly, rapidly. Someone once said the final moves will be rapid ones, and things are happening just that way. So let's look at the next article here. Remember, I'm doing this all as I want to investigate to make sure that someone is not asking me to begin acquiring gold just for the sake of benefiting them. I wanted to know, is there really a need, something to be concerned about in our own world economy and locally? And the things that I have found are startling. Absolutely startling. The next article here, let's notice this article. As confidence in the dollar wanes, over a dozen states push for gold as legal tender. We got that. Lawmakers in Arizona are poised to follow Utah, which authored bullion for currency in 2011. Now notice the next paragraph where it says, the legislation is about signaling discontent with monetary policy and about what Ben Bernanke is doing, said Getch, who studies alternative currencies at Edmond, Oklahoma-based school. There is a fear, now listen, there is a fear that the government, or Bernanke in particular, and the Federal Reserve is pursuing a policy that will lead to the collapse of the dollar, and that's what's behind it. That's what's behind it. People are concerned that the dollar is going to collapse, and so entire states are moving forward with legislation so that they will be protected in a way that will help sustain the residents of those states in the event that the dollar will collapse. By the way, I want to tell you that people from all walks of life who are well-known scholars and authors on economics and world finance and trade and marketing are all saying that the dollar isn't going to stand, the dollar is going to collapse, and some think that it's even going to happen within the first quarter of 2014. I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. That's not why I'm sharing this with you. What I am sharing this with you for is so that you will see the urgency of the times that you and I are living in, that you need to do something in order to be able to prepare for what is happening around us. And I want to encourage you to begin acquiring gold, and specifically through Karatbarsfree.com, a division of Karatbars International. It's a site that I have set up personally. I've been a pastor for many years. I'm just trying to help people. I want you to know what is coming, and I can't tell you enough how important it is to be prepared. Folks, listen, the time is coming and happening rapidly when we're not going to be able to maintain the same kinds of things that we have been doing for years and years and years. I'm just shooting this from my own dining room here. I've constructed some things, set up some things so that we could bring this message to you, but I just can't say enough. You need to begin acquiring gold, precious metals, to be able to sustain yourself. I just started doing this a few weeks ago, and I want to tell you that 3 weeks ago it was $1,226 an ounce. Today it's $1,334 an ounce. Less than 3 weeks, it's gone $100 an ounce. Now I'm going to share some other things with you as we continue on. Let me put the big picture back up here on the screen, and let's move on to the next slide here. The next slide shows us a picture of Ben Bernanke, and people are making statements that they're not putting their faith and trust in him. They're wanting to put their faith and trust in gold, in things that will help, they'll sustain. And so let's look at the next page of the same article. In the same article, I'm switching back and forth here, so I apologize for taking time in between these cuts. The next page of the same article says that the legislation is about signaling discontent with monetary policy. And I want you to notice the paragraph underneath that. It says Bernanke has pushed interest rates to near zero since the 18-month recession began in December of 2007. The Fed said in March that it would continue buying $85 billion in securities each month in a program known as quantitative easing that has ballooned its assets up beyond $3 trillion and is aimed at keeping long-term borrowing costs low to support economic growth. The challenge with all of this is that as hard as people have tried, nothing is working. I don't know if you quite get or understand what is happening in the world today, but as hard as people have tried, nothing seems to be working. Nothing, absolutely nothing seems to be working. Okay, so let's look at the next slide here as we look closer at the coming global collapse of the dollar and the world economy. I'm not a doomsdayer. I walk with my eyes open. I have a loving family. I do my best to provide for them. But I'm concerned about things just like everybody else. So let's look at this next slide here and see what has already happened. Arizona set to okay gold, silver currency. This was an article published on April 20, 2013. Remember, the last one that I shared with you was from April the 8th of last year. This one was published on April the 20th of 2013. And notice what it says. Let me switch back here so I can make sure that you're seeing this okay. Okay, notice what it says. It says Arizona set to okay gold, silver currency. Some conservative lawmakers say they fear paper money could become virtually worthless because of federal debt. And by the way, that's a fact, and I'll give you proof of that in just a moment. A gold buyer inspects a 1 ounce piece of gold there in the picture. The highlights. It says it may be time for Arizonians who have invested in gold and silver to take their stockpiles of coins out of hiding and get ready to put them to use. All right? This has already happened. These states have begun legislation that has made it legal tender to use gold in currency. In other words, it's perfectly legal to walk into a place and use gold as currency in Arizona, in these other states who have moved forward with legislation, who have passed it. Why? They made this decision because they were worried about the collapse of the dollar, that its value was going to go down to zero, inflation was going to skyrocket, and nothing would be there to back up the currency that we now know and hold in our own hands, have in our back pockets, in your purse, your pocketbook. Why? Because we used to be a gold-backed currency. The dollar used to be backed by gold. But in 1971, President Nixon removed the backing of the gold in order that we might be able to borrow more, so that more people would be able to spend more, and hopefully it would fuel the economy with more income and more flow of finances, so that businesses would grow, the same things that we have heard many, many times. But the problem is that we began on a cycle that never really returned back to positive growth. The next slide just simply is Ben Bernanke, as he himself didn't have the answers, didn't claim to have the answers, didn't really know what was coming next. And now, of course, we have Dr. Janet Yellen, who is the new chairman of the Federal Reserve, trying her best, and gold has begun to rise since. Now listen, there's only a couple of different reasons that gold will increase in its value. One is inflation. Two is if other solid currencies, gas, natural resources, oil, might be at risk, and then gold then increases again, or the value of the dollar collapses and everyone scurries trying to find something to be able to sustain them, to be able to generate some wealth and income so that they can withstand the hardships that will follow the collapse of the dollar. Folks, I really don't know how to say this any more clearly. The dollar will collapse. Well-known economists are saying this over and over and over again. And I would like to share with you a study that has been done a few years ago on the global economy and whether or not the right time would be taking place when we would be able to move to one world currency. Okay? The time is coming when there will be one world currency, and so there was a study that was done not too long ago. And in this study, all of the nations of the world were studied and looked at. Now I want to blow this up for you a little bit so you can see it a little bit more clearly. On this graph, you'll be able to see that here is a picture. Whoops, let me get this back here. On this graph, you will be able to see that here is a picture of nations of the world, and in the graph there's color shades. I'm going to move that little ticker out of the way. The green is the US dollar, blue is the euro, and if you see any little dots of red, they're the yen. Now you can see that this majority of the world is using the dollar and the euro in vast amounts. So let's move to the next slide. The next slide shows the rest of the world, and you can see again the dollar being used. You see the yen off in this one little area, and then you can see also the dollar and the euro being mixed and used together. Now why is this important? This is important because in this study it was concluded that there has never been a time in history when you could move to one world currency like we have now, because there has never been a time in the world that more countries have been using the same type of currency in order to be able to take take care of their needs, whether it's shopping, whether it's payment of bills, whether it's payment of debts, whether it's trading, whatever it might be. People all over the world, the majority, are using either number one, the dollar, or number two, the euro, or number three, in very minute cases, the yen. Now, these three are the primary currencies around the world, and in the maps that I have shown to you, you can see that in the majority of the world, the dollar and the euro are the ones that are being used. And I'm going to back up one slide so you can see this again. All over the world, without question, these are the currencies that are being used. And the challenge is that as the dollar begins to collapse and inflation begins to rise, and as the European Union begins to stumble and falter and fall, and people don't really know what is going to be happening next, and inflation begins to rise, unrest begins to set in, and people are scurrying trying to stabilize the markets, all of a sudden there comes a need to be able to create one world currency so that you and I would be able to sustain ourselves in a much simpler fashion throughout the world. It would make trading simpler. It would allow everyone to use the same type of currency. There wouldn't be as much confusion about things. It would be a very, very simple change. But let's continue on and see why it is that we should even be concerned about this. Remember how the state legislators were saying that they were concerned about the direction of Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve and how we are losing the value of the dollar? This next slide illustrates for us that the debt that we face here in the United States of America has increased over and over and over again. Now, this is not a political video, so don't listen to that if you're even thinking that. This is just an illustration so that you can know where we're at in the world today. This is a graph that was updated February 11, 2013, just about a week ago. Okay? This gives us a debt graph that shows us where we're at and where we have been. Now, you can see from where we are back to 2008, it's almost a direct incline up, as President Obama has been. In fact, let me just say it this way: it has nothing to do with anybody's president or not. This is just the facts. Okay, President George W. Bush created as much debt for the United States of America as all the presidents before him in just his term. Okay, now that sounds bad, but President Obama, following President Bush, has now reached the point of creating enough debt in his term in office to have equaled everything from the very first president all the way through President George W. Bush in just his 2 terms in office, and he's not even finished. That's not his fault. That's just the state of the economy. And so I'm trying to get the picture across to you that things are happening and the dollar is going to collapse, and you need to be prepared. Let's look at the next graph here. Somebody not too long ago was I don't know if you want to say publishing or passing around different stockbrokers and trading areas that there's a graph. Perhaps they were data mining, and you know, data mining is just simply you look at the stock market over X number of years, and you try to find where it went well, and you try to find where it did not go so well. And then you see where we're at now, and you see if the graph on the chart where we are matches a place on the chart in the data at any other point in history, and you try to conclude whether that is something to expect now. Now, someone did some data mining here, and they began to pass this chart around, this graph of what the economy was like in 1929, just before the stock market crash and the Great Depression took place. And then they compared it to the current trends, and they said it eerily parallels the same pattern that we saw in 1928-29. Well, I think if you look at the graph, we can conclude that that is indeed true. But it's not saying that there's proof that we're going to enter into a Great Depression just like we did. We don't know that. But what it is saying is that the patterns are there, and with all the other signals in place, we do have reasons to be concerned about the decline of the dollar, about the collapse of the dollar, and about the need to develop one world currency, and also about the need to be able to create wealth and security for yourself by obtaining precious metals, gold and silver, and I want to encourage you to get gold. Now, I happen to live in the great state of Illinois, and so I want to share with you an article. Since I live in a county called DuPage County, Illinois, the DuPage National Bank was a small bank with only $61.7 million in assets, but it was the second bank in the United States to close this year. And I want you to notice a couple of these things that are mentioned. Excuse me. This bank survived many years. It was in operation for 123 years before failing. It was established in 1891. DuPage survived depressions and world wars, but finally collapsed under the weight of bad loans. Why are the loans so bad? Well, it's because people aren't working. It's because people aren't getting as much bang for their buck. The dollar doesn't have as much value, and inflation continues to increase, and the banks are left holding large debts that people are unable to pay, and one by one banks are collapsing. And by the way, on this note, here in Illinois or throughout the United States, there are 565 banks on the watch list for failing right now, and 60 of those 565 banks are in the state of Illinois. Now that should tell you something. 60 of 565 banks on the watch list are in the state of Illinois. Okay, let's continue moving. I'm taking up too much of your time. I know it's interesting, but I don't want to keep you. There was another article here by Saddle Tramp titled "The Grand Finale Part 3." And in this article, I just want to share with you that this writer really has been pretty right on key with their thoughts and predictions about how things will go. And so the value in their projections has everything to do with the credibility of things that they have said in the past. And so there are many things that have been said that really have been happening. So they outline a 5-prong or 5 rings that should be of concern to you and to me. So let's take a look at these a little bit. He says the first ring, as we look at the world economic collapse, is a stage already gone dark. In case you missed the act of the circus, I'll recap. He says it really began with the dry run stress test in the fall of 2013, but you could argue that the beginning of the taper in December of 2013 was the beginning of the actual collapse, if you're so inclined. In other words, he's saying the collapse has already happening. I said in part 2, the grand finale, that QE, taper, and Basel III, Dodd-Frank were inexorably tied together. And indeed they were, because immediately after the announcement of QE taper by the Fed on January 1, 2014, Basel III and the banking rules and regulations of Dodd-Frank became fully operational. In other words, as soon as things began to happen, they began to happen quickly. I'm just telling you, the final moves are going to be rapid ones. The second ring in play, and pay particular attention to the woman with a bad haircut behind the curtain, he says. Wealth will be evaporating hand over fist, and near the end of this stage you will hear financial pundits begin to mention that dreaded ogre of deflation, as Christine Lagarde put it. The liquidity crisis will be in full swing, and as the margin requirements increase because of volatility, no investor will be entirely spared. In other words, the next thing that will happen is things will begin deflating. The third ring, where the players are warming up in the darkness when the banks get their direction from their respective regulators regarding Basel III and Dodd-Frank regulations that have gone into effect, when yield on the 10-year has once again moved higher because of political wrangling over the debt ceiling. When financial pundits are taking deflation and bear markets, the lights will come up on the third ring. Now, I don't know if you kept up with what happened when the debt ceiling was raised, but when the debt ceiling was raised, there was no ceiling, really. I mean, it was just a green light given to President Obama to just continue raising it as high as he wanted to raise it. There was no limit to the debt ceiling. In other words, we have set ourselves up to go into debt so bad that we are almost destined for a collapse in our economy. The fourth ring, where the players are rolling snowballs into a mountain, established manufacturing and exporting nations will be presented with a quandary at this point. Do they take up the policy abandoned by the Fed and do massive liquidity injections in the face of potential and hyperinflation and revolution in their overpopulated countries, or do they follow the example of the Fed and soak up the wealth of their newly created middle-class millionaires and billionaires? In other words, people who have obtained wealth and money are at risk for having it taken away, because that's what's already happening in some countries, and others will begin to follow suit. That's a projection that is being made. So I want to move on to the next slide because we're almost finished here. The next slide simply says the fifth ring is where the players stand with locked hands to take a bow. So now the spotlight falls on the stage of the fifth ring, and the contagion of the world economic collapse has finally washed ashore in the United States of America. The Fed will stubbornly say this is all going to according to plan. Money will flee from other markets to treasuries, and they will say that the dollar has been insulated. It will look like they are ready to proclaim the peak of the crisis. The trumpets will blare that the dollar has endured, and then the COMEX will default, and perhaps a major business important to the infrastructure of the United States will run out of money. Or a large bank will come into focus and claim that they have enough reserves to survive to the end of the world. Then around 3 days later, they will fold their tent like Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, saying the fifth ring is going to be full of promises and people are going to be encouraged, and then all of a sudden, after everyone feels good, just a few days later, everything is going to collapse and things are going to change different than we have ever known in our lifetime. So let's continue looking here at the next at the next slide. One of President Obama's executive orders allows seizure of Americans' bank accounts. Now, you may not have known this, but simply what it does is it allows the United States government to be able to obtain everything you have in your bank account. It can take anything that you have. It can seize your assets, your funds, anything that you may have in savings, whatever it may be. It can all become the property of the United States government overnight, just like that. It's intended for those who are involved in terrorism, but it is broad enough that it can be applied to anybody. And believe me, in the middle of a national debt crisis, when the dollar is collapsing, inflation is increasing, and the economy is in unrest, it could be considered, conceivably, that anyone not willing to contribute to the good of the economy through their own financial means may be considered an act of terrorism, and thereby their bank account could be, I'm not saying will be, I'm saying could be seized in light of the good of the economy of the United States of America. Startling things that I found out. Here I was thinking that all I was going to find out is the value of gold and the reason to begin investing and how much money I would be able to make. But what I really found out was that the state of the economy is in such disarray that there's really nothing that anybody can do about it, as hard as they will try, and we are going to see the collapse of the dollar, and you need to be ready for that. You need to begin investing in gold today. You need to begin preparing for the future so that your family is protected. You need to click at the bottom of the screen here, and you need to begin signing up at Karatbars International through this website, karatbarsfree.com, so that I can help you be able to protect yourself and your family, and also be able to generate income and wealth. Notice this graph here. This is a graph of the United States dollar, and the United States dollar over the years has declined in value. You can see it was actually worth $1 in 1913, but in 2005 it was down to about 10 cents, and now today in 2014 leading economists are telling us that the dollar is worth really only about 1 to 3 cents. I don't know if you really understood what that means. The dollar is really only worth about 1 to 3 cents today, because it's no longer backed by gold. It's not backed by anything except for good faith in the government and in the Federal Reserve. By the way, the Federal Reserve is not even owned by the United States government, but that's a whole different story, and so I hope that you'll look into some of the other videos and things that we have posted here. So let's go on to the next slide here as we look and see what lies ahead. Now here's an article. This is an article that emphasizes the concern that India has as India begins smuggling gold into the country, trying to be able to retain and gain as much gold as India can, so that they will be able to withstand the coming worldwide, and yes, I said worldwide, economic recession. It's not going to be localized. It's going to be worldwide, and you need to be ready. You need to be prepared for the things that are going to happen. It's going to be a time like you've never ever expected before. You need to be ready. Here we see an article from the former Pope. Notice here, as the Vatican calls for a new global financial authority amid economic crisis. The Vatican made this call, and the Vatican didn't just stop there. It said there's new ideologies are reducing the common good to the economic, financial, technical questions, placing the future of democratic institutions themselves at risk, said Roman Catholic Bishop Mario Tasso at a Monday press conference. And then the Pope began, Pope John Paul II began this push, and other popes have now followed, saying that we need to have one world currency. And it doesn't just stop there. There are whole groups of people and world leaders that are devoted to having one world currency. They're investigating, they're studying, they're trying to figure out what works best in order to be able to have one world currency. Now, you have heard certainly different things related to bitcoins and others, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But let me highlight this. In May the 21st of 2012, an article entitled "The Economic Crisis," more than 70 experts from 40 countries prepare an open letter for the G20 countries leaders in Kazakhstan. Okay, and in this letter, if you're able to see, let me just go back here and pull it up in the large screen for you here. In this letter, you can see where it says the need of constructive collaboration has been repeatedly said by the President of Kazakhstan, speaking from the rostrum of the solemn meeting in Astana to the world community in December of 2011. He said that at the very beginning of 2009, in the midst of the crisis, I took the initiative to the global financial reform. In other words, world leaders began this process years ago. I have said that light anti-crisis measures will not save the world from the waves of the growing crisis. In other words, things that people are doing aren't going to stop what's coming, aren't going to save the world. The course of events has confirmed these words. No one has been able to offer the world the anti-crisis plan which would be adopted by consensus. Unfortunately, the formats of the G20, G8 show the inefficiency. Discussing of the world anti-crisis plan is not even started. In other words, people have known about this for years, and now it's almost too late, and in fact, nothing will be able to be done in order to avert an impending crisis and collapse of the world and global economy. I just want to tell you again, you're not here by accident. Karatbarsfree.com is here to be able to help you be prepared for things that are happening and things that are coming. The dollar is decreasing, inflation is increasing, debt is increasing. Everything is pointing to the increase in value of gold as a precious metal as time continues moving forward, and you need to begin making these decisions today. So click at the bottom of the screen. People talk about Bitcoin, but I just want to tell you that Bitcoin is not going to be what some people hope that it will be. Some people hope that it will become the world currency, but in fact that's not going to be the case at all. Notice at the bottom of this paragraph says paper or metal is worth something only if people continue to believe in it. That's why the struggle with the economy. People don't have faith in the Bitcoin. They have their faith in the precious metals that you and I both know as gold. Gold currency is something that has stood the test of time. It lasts, and it will be there over and over and over again around the world. So this is an opportunity to prepare and be sustained by that. Somebody asked the question, can gold really replace the US dollar? And so an author by the name of Heo Lee on May 31 of 2011 began to write in response to that question. And what they said, excuse me, what they said in the article was simply this. Public faith in Western currencies has hit an extreme low. Faith in the US dollar is especially weak because the United States government keeps on spending money it doesn't have by borrowing from the generous printing presses of the Federal Reserve, and we know that to be true because we just raised the debt ceiling to an infinite place that we don't even know. Countries like China have lost some faith in the US dollar. United States citizens are starting to hoard precious metal. Even United States states are trying to encourage alternative currencies. That's what I told you earlier. A key question is if gold can actually be a currency and replace the dollar. If not, it'll be confined as an investment vehicle or a store of value, which must be converted back to the dollar to be used for commercial transactions. So the answer of the question is in the next slide, which simply says, yes, yes. Proponents of the gold currency say yes. First, there are gold coins. A 1 ounce coin, for example, would fetch over $1,500. Therefore, it's practically possible to carry around tens of thousands of dollars in your pocket. In other words, gold can be currency here in these great United States of America. The dollar is going to fail. The dollar is going to collapse, and you need to begin today acquiring gold as best you can, becoming a part of Karatbars International, working through the systematic plan that we have in place that helps you and your family to be able to easily and sustainably acquire gold for you, for your family, and also if you do this right, you can acquire it without even having to pay for it out of your own pocket. And I'll tell you more about that later. But you need to sign up. You need to be part of Karatbars, and you need to sign up today. So the next slide, as we continue moving forward, really just gives us a highlight of what the forecast is for gold, saying that in the first quarter of the year it's expected to go over $1,400. So why wouldn't you consider going to acquire gold when you know that it's only going to increase? It's already at over $1,300. $1,400 is not very far away, so I want to encourage you to begin acquiring that gold now. But having gold is not enough. We need to continue our homework here and get the rest of these questions answered. Someone asked the question, can gold be used as cash, asset, or both? And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I just want to go to the bottom of the next paragraph in the document, and that bottom paragraph, let me get you over here so we'll be on the same page. That paragraph says, so gold is both an asset and cash. In good times it is an asset, in bad times it is cash. The functioning as one or the other depends on the times we have around us, both locally and internationally. And I want to tell you, there's never been a time like right now where gold is going to continue to increase in value. You need to be ready for what is happening. You need to be prepared. You need to begin acquiring gold today through Karatbars.com, Karatbarsfree.com. Right here, just click join now underneath of this video and become a part of our team so that we can help you be prepared for what is coming. Let's move on to the next slide here as we try to wrap these things up here. The next slide shows us another highlighted paragraph, and this one is from a history of the gold standard. Now, in the history of the gold standard, why is this important? President Herbert Hoover made a statement in 1933 that rang true for centuries and still rings true today for many. And this is what he said, quote, "We have gold because we cannot trust governments," end quote. Now, President of the United States himself made that statement, quote, "We have gold because we cannot trust governments," end quote. Now, President Herbert Hoover made that statement, and it's just as true today as it was when he made it, if not more true. If not more true. So the time to begin acquiring gold is now. Time to begin acquiring gold is right now. Let me get this bottom ticker off here as we continue on. All right, our next slide here just reminds us that time is running out. We don't know how much longer it will be, but I can tell you this, it's not going to be a lot longer. It's going to be a very short time, I believe, as we look forward to what lies ahead. And that's why I'm trying to encourage you to begin now getting ready for this global financial crisis. That's what you need to do. That's what you need in order to be ready. Are you ready for what's coming next? Okay, so in the magazine that was published in January this year, this is a special issue, 2014 investment guide. I don't know if you can see this okay, but this is Forbes magazine. This is Forbes magazine 365, and it says 365 ways to get rich. And in this magazine, among the different areas that have been highlighted, one area was gold. I want you to notice what was said about gold. I almost got stopped here by accident. How do you like that? What this magazine says about gold says, despite buffeting, gold retains its unique investment value. This was just published this year. Okay, so let's look at the next article here, or next page in the article, and let me get to where, by the way, this was written by David Mazza, someone who is very well educated and understands markets and the value, unique value of gold as a unique asset in its class. So let me go on to the next slide here, and then we'll see this conclusion that he has. All right, so let me pull this up, and he says that today, gold is one of the best places to invest for people who are wanting an effective hedge against inflation, dollar depreciation, stock market volatility. In our opinion, gold is both an investment and a financial asset. Same thing that I just read. So gold is something that you invest in, but it is also an asset. It's something that you can count on to retain its value in good times and in bad. As gold continues to increase, it's always on track with the dollar decreasing. I want you to notice in this article here, as I was continuing my research, now Mazza said that he expected gold to be over $1,400 in the first quarter. This next article makes a prediction that by 2016, gold could be $3,700 an ounce. Now let me ask you, would that be a good decision to begin acquiring gold right now when it's $1,200 to $1,300 an ounce, knowing that in 2016 it could be $3,700 an ounce? I personally believe it's going to be more than that. But gold is going to continue increasing as everything begins to collapse. And I can tell you that everything will collapse from several different sources that I know that are trustworthy and that you can count on and depend on. So let's just wrap this thing up here, shall we? And let's look at this last slide here. You can see a graph a couple of weeks ago of the stock market and gold and how it was doing and where it is now. And let me get that on the screen for you here. You can see that graph there as it charts the gold going on up. It's increasing in value. Now let me show you this other one a little bit closer up. This is a graph that I just took yesterday. February 23. And in this graph, you can see that gold has been steadily increasing to $1,328. I said a little over $1,300 an ounce. It's even higher than that. $1,328 is what gold has begun increasing to. So you and I have all of the evidence, all of the signs that we need in order to know what is a wise decision for acquiring the right things that will protect us in the event of a global economic collapse. We know this. I can't emphasize enough that we know this, and we need to act on the decisions that we now know. You now know what to expect. You now know what is going to be coming. You now know that the dollar is going to collapse, that inflation is going to increase, that the world economy is in trouble, and that there's no time like the present to have one world currency, and that as all of these things happen, the value of gold is going to continue increasing and eventually skyrocket as we move forward. And you and I have a time like no other time when we can begin preparing for what is to come. So I want to finish with just a few slides here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Karatbars and the need to be prepared, and let us help you be prepared through Karatbars International. Now, when a friend of mine came to me and started talking to me about Karatbars, I told you, I looked things up, I did my homework, I began to investigate. And what I found was what you've just learned, and I haven't even shared everything with you, but it's enough to know that if you can in any way begin acquiring gold, you need to begin doing that, and you need to begin doing that right now. Karatbars International is a company that's been around in the United States of America since 2011. It owns its own gold mine, and it has a plan whereby it allows individuals to participate in generating wealth and acquiring gold and even become affiliates if they so desire, so that they can even help others to be able to find global success and financial freedom for themselves, for their family, for anywhere that you would go in the world. But when I was told about Karatbars, I couldn't help but look up all of these different things, and you will notice that in this graph it illustrates that gold, while the dollar has increased over the years, gold has steadily increased. The dollar has decreased, gold has increased, and look at this graph. Let me put this up here bigger for you to see this. That's easier to see. You can see that the dollar used to be valued in 1932. Since 1932, gold has outperformed cash by more than 4,300%. In 1932, $100,000. In 1932, $100,000 in gold was $100,000. Today, that has increased by 4,300%, and the dollar, being worth $1, is now worth 2 cents. So, somebody asks you for your 2 cents, I guess you could just give them $1 if you wanted to, but you probably better hold on to it and begin acquiring gold with it as best you can now. I want to encourage you to begin moving forward with Karatbars Free today. Now this gold card that I showed you earlier, this gold card was simply something that was sent out by Karatbars when I began to be part of this. And Karatbars, let me get this on the right place where you can see it. Karatbars International, you give them what is needed to begin acquiring gold, and you can take this gold at a gram a time, or you can get 5 grams a time. You can get it in different denominations, if you will. But 28 grams is an ounce, and the more grams that you can get, the more prepared you will be for the coming economic collapse. It's real gold, 99.9% pure currency grade gold, and it's something that will help sustain you and your family in the coming economic crisis. So as the dollar goes down, gold goes up. And as gold goes up, you need to consider going to karatbarsfree.com. At the bottom of this video, clicking the link, going to karatbarsfree.com, and signing up, selecting that join now. Just go to follow the link, sign up. You don't have to pay anything to sign up, but I want to encourage you to begin with a package where you can start acquiring gold now. And if you start with a silver package at a minimum, you will begin acquiring your gold today, and you will be on the path to financial freedom, and you will also be able to help others to make the same decisions. After this, there was another slide here that showed us that card again. Remember, I showed you my card. This is my card. You'll get yours as soon as you sign up. Sign up for that silver package. You'll begin getting your gold cards today. This is just a graph, a chart that shows you how much income you would be able to obtain over 12 weeks. You would be able to go from whatever you're making now to making
about $4,500 a week. Not a bad little income for just trying to save and prepare and take care of your family, or even yourself for that matter. You can begin this process today so that you can be on that path to financial freedom and independence and not be affected by the economy. So are you ready for what's coming next? You need this 99.9% currency grade gold. And I want to encourage you to not just look at Karatbars. I've done the homework for you. I've been a pastor for many years. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I don't believe is right. But I can tell you that I've done my homework, and you need to be a part, if at all possible, of Karatbars. Just join up now through karatbarsfree.com right here on this website and become a part of our team so that we can help you. This is the perfect opportunity. There's not an opportunity like this that you'll find anywhere else. Believe me, I have looked, and as I have looked, I have found more and more reasons. You need to start creating wealth today before it's too late. You know, it's going to change. It's going to happen fast. You need to start creating wealth today before it's too late. And not just that, you still have time right now, but you don't have much time. Sign up now. Get prepared. Get ready. You still have time, but not much time. Go to www.karatbarsfree.com and start acquiring your gold now so that you can be prepared. Just click the link below, www.karatbarsfree.com, and become a part of our team so that I can help you, our team can help you start acquiring your gold now, right now. Just go to the website, fill it out, fill out the registration form. It doesn't cost you anything, but if you can, begin with a package that's the minimum silver and start acquiring your gold today so that you can begin preparing for this coming economic crisis. And I can tell you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's never been a time like right now when you have the opportunity to be prepared and you can know what's coming. Never been a time like right now. So let me talk to you plainly. I've listened to people talk to me about Karatbars. I've seen people in action, and I want to tell you that there are a lot of people who will make promises that they'll help you, that they'll help you get started, that they'll be there to support you, that they'll help you know the details of the ins and the outs and how things work. There'll be a support system to you, but I can tell you that that has not happened for me. And because of that, I have had to learn many things the hard way. And because of that, I can tell you that I will help you every step of the way. You just call me. Go to the website. The phone number is right there. You just call me, www.karatbarsfree.com, and I will help you get started. I will help you with any questions that you might have, and you will be on the path to financial freedom and success today. That's what I want for you. I want you to be able to obtain financial success and freedom. The world is not going to continue functioning the way that we have seen it functioning. It's time to secure your future today. You need to start acquiring gold currency grade gold now. Make the steps that are necessary to do what you can so that you can be prepared and we won't have to be affected by this global financial breakdown that is coming. So thank you for stopping by this website. Click the link below. Join now. If you're not already at karatbarsfree.com, get there. That's the website we've created. Select the link that says join now and just fill out the form. And if you're at all possible able to join as a VIP, do that. But if nothing else, at least try to join as a silver package But you can sign up for free and begin receiving updates and know what is happening in the world, and I will help you. You just let me know what I can do to help you, and I will help you. So now here we are. The world is turning. You have the opportunity to secure your future to the best of your ability today. Whatever you can do, you will be rewarded for. Do your best to take care of your family, to be able to provide for your loved ones, to be able to have a sustainable income, and to be able to generate wealth. And know that we are here to help and support you every step of the way. Thank you for stopping by KaratbarsFree.com, and I look forward to talking to you soon.